Minimalists.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Minimalist Podcast, where we discuss what it means to live a meaningful life with less. My name is Joshua Fields Milburn.
And I am Ryan Nicodemus, and together we are the Minimalists. How's my hair, man? I forgot to check my hair before we did this video.
And you're looking good.
Thanks, man.
So good. This is episode 167. Today, we're going to talk about collectibles.
Oh, nice. All of our collections we get to talk about.
Yeah, I brought in my collection.
Your collection of nothing?
My collection
How come your collection of nothing is better and bigger than mine?
My less is more than your less.
Oh, man.
All right, our first question today is from James in the UK.
I've got lots of things, and such things as maybe a book. I'm looking at a very nice copy of The Hobbit, and I'm wondering if I'll ever read it again. But it's got personal memories, and it's a good decoration, I suppose. But I'm not sure just how much value I get out of it. I'm wondering what your kind of experiences with such things, and also like tucked away in storage under my bed, and here and there I've got things like old consoles and things which might become collectible in 50 odd years time, and it's very unlikely because so many people have bought these things, but how will I know that I'll never need them again?
All right, so Ryan, I'm thinking here, he said a few things that really stood out to me. First off, he said I have a lot of things.
Yes.
And then he gives an example like books, and then he gives a more specific example like a nice copy, a very nice copy of The Hobbit. Not just a nice copy, but a very nice copy. And he said, I wonder whether I'll ever read it again. And then he said something that really stood out to me. He said, it has personal memories, and it's a good decoration, I suppose.
Yeah.
And I'm all for having decorations. I'm all for having things that trigger memories, but that's exactly what it is. The memories aren't in that object. The memories are inside you, and sometimes the things can trigger memories, but if it's just sitting there collecting dust and you're never going to use it, then I don't think the one book is a problem, though, obviously, right?
Did he say it was sitting on a bookshelf? I think it was like tucked away somewhere, he said, right?
Well,
like
then
just kinda...
he did ask. He said, well, there are other things he has. He said, well, I've got things tucked away in storage under my bed here and there,
like the Hobbit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he said I've got old consoles which might become collectibles in 50 years. How will I know if I ever need them again?
Yeah, so it sounds like he's holding on to something, even this copy of The Hobbit, because it might be worth something in 50 years.
And I think it's here the might thing, it stands out, right? Because everything might be a collectible.
Such a slippery slope, man.
Absolutely. So I think just because something might be a collectible, that is not a good enough reason to hold on to the thing. Now, let's talk about the book for a second, because the book was the first thing he mentioned, and then there was the cascade of other stuff. He said, I have lots of things, right? But start with that book. Having a book is not the problem. Even if you're never, ever going to use it ever again, you're never going to look at it, it's just going to sit on a shelf. The most collections themselves, even if it's a book collection, a card collection, whatever, most collections are relatively benign. Yeah. And I don't think the collections themselves are the problem. I think collecting for the sake of collecting is the problem. I think the terminus of collecting is hoarding. Yeah. I mean, there is when you see these shows or documentaries of like hoarders' houses, it all started with I might need this someday.
Yeah.
This might be worth something. Maybe not even to someone else, but this might be worth something to me someday. You and I in the past used to have like stacks of old magazines because like, well, I guess I'll reference this Details magazine from 2004 and the truth is that we never were. And might it be worth more now than it was then? Yeah, maybe a few dollars more. Yeah. But what is your sanity worth? What is your calm worth? What is the reduction of stress worth to you? Because obviously if you're thinking about these things, they're weighing on you. What's the psychological cost of holding on to them?
Yeah, I mean, for me, when it comes to collecting things, I mean, I don't have... Actually, I take that back. I do have a collection of books, let's say, for example. I've got a bookshelf with some books on there. So you could technically say that is a collection of books. Right. I don't allow that collection to go above and beyond that bookshelf. And there are times where, the last time I think about doing that is when James Clear sent me a copy of Atomic Habits. I went to go put it on my bookshelf. I'm like, oh, there's no room on this bookshelf anymore. So I picked out a book, put it in the donation box, and put James' book in there. Yeah. So I think when it comes,
did you have a process for that? When you looked at the books, you were just like, okay, for me, my limit is this one bookshelf.
Yeah.
Did you have a process where you said, okay, here's the one I need to remove. This one is I'm going to get more value from.
No, it's more about I look at everything that's on the shelf and I ask myself, if I had to force myself, which I was forcing myself to get rid of a book, which one am I going to miss the least? So that I tell you what, I missed that book so little that I got rid of. I couldn't even tell you what book I pulled off the shelf and replaced Atomic Habits with.
Ella and I were my 5-year-old, and her mother and I were playing this game this weekend before she went to bed, and it was guess my favorite thing in the house. Right? It was her idea to do this.
That's awesome.
So she made us walk around the house, look at all the objects in the house. and then we had to guess each other's favorite thing, right?
Oh, wow.
And it was fascinating what her favorite things were versus mine, and we started guessing things, and I'm like the chair that I sit in pretty much every day, like that was in my top 10, but it wasn't my favorite thing in the house. And the way that I thought about this exercise, when Ella held my hand, dragged me around the house, the way I thought about what are my favorite things for me is, what are the things I would replace first? So this whole house just burnt down today. This apartment building burnt down.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Well, and so I was asking about the books, because it's like, what are the books I know I would replace? And maybe some of those books you would never replace. And I guess for James here, what would you replace? That very nice copy of The Hobbit, or would you just not replace it? And maybe that is a good marker for me.
That is a great question to ask. If this collection burnt to the ground, because it's often we get people coming out to our events and they'll ask us about a collection or some kind of old thing that they're holding on to, and I will tend to ask them, if it burnt, if it spontaneously combusted, if you walked out of this theater and you got a phone call and that thing spontaneously combusted, how would you feel? And it's amazing because sometimes people will be like, I'd be relieved. And then other times they're like, oh yeah, I'd be devastated. I mean, that's a really good indicator on whether or not something actually is adding value to your life.
Well, it's amazing that the devastation versus relief is really just a mindset. It's the story that we tell ourselves. Yeah. However, there are some things I noticed that all the things that were sort of on my top 10, my imaginary top 10 list of things, as Ella was dragging me around the house, they were all things that were very useful for me and enhanced my life. So my number one thing that no one guessed it was my pillow. In fact, when we go on long tours, I will often bring my pillow with me. And here's the thing, I don't even know what brand of pillow it is. I know I've tested a bunch, but I know it works really well for me because of my back problems. I got one for Bex, and she hated it. It was messing her neck up, and it was terrible for her. So we all have these different needs as well. And so just because something works for you or worked for your former self, maybe that Hobbit book was great 10 years ago for you, but maybe you don't need it anymore.
Well, dude, I was thinking with James's his question specifically with the Hobbit book, he can do a little research, and anyone can do this. They could take something that they're holding onto, that they're collecting, consoles or books or whatever it is. They can do some research and at least get an idea of what the demand is, whether it's something, are there only a few of these left? I mean, if you do a little bit of research, maybe you can get a better picture on what something is going to be worth. But ultimately, you can never really say whether or not something's going to be worth something. And if you go into it with that attitude of, well, I'm going to hold on to things just in case they might be worth something one day, then you're going to hold on to everything. I mean,
investing in commodities is just a bad investment strategy in general. All the experts will tell you that, right? We were on Dave Ramsey last year, and we were having conversations with him, and one of the first things he'll tell you is you don't want to invest in precious metals or different objects unless it's real estate. But the objects themselves are generally bad investments. Are there exceptions to that? Of course. But when you look at the percentages, if you're looking at objects as an investment, unless you're doing this as a full-time job and you're a curator, it's usually a bad investment. Now, for me also, those top 10 things, as I was going around my house, and I'm like, definitely my boots. My boots, I wear them pretty much every day. Definitely these Mission Workshop pants that I'm wearing. These are like in my top 10 of things I would replace almost immediately. Yeah. My bed that I sleep on, I don't even know the brand of bed. I just know that after trying a bunch, it was the hardest piece of concrete I could find, basically. That is something. But none of these things I'm mentioning, my chair, my Ames chair, which I mean is something I sit in every single day. The chair at my desk is something that's really comfortable, and I sit in every day. These are all things that aren't collectibles necessarily.
Right.
I mean, maybe someone could have them as collectibles, but for me, they have a specific use, and they increase the value. They amplify my experience of life is maybe a better way to put that. Now let's talk about just in case items, because I think James is maybe holding on to a lot of these things, especially with the might. That might is just another word for just in case, right?
Yeah.
When he said
just in case it's worth something someday.
Right. I've got things like old consoles which might become collectibles in 50 years, so I'm going to hold on to them just in case. Is the implicit statement there, right? And so there's a difference between just in case and just for when. And we have an essay on our website. We'll put a link to this in the show notes, but here's the gist of it really quick. This is just for when. Too often we cling to the things we own just in case we might need them someday. Of course, someday rarely arrives, and yet we continue to clutch tightly to the excess in our basements, closets, attics, junk drawers, and storage facilities. Just in case. The three most dangerous words in the English language. They encourage us to stockpile our junk as if it's essential. In reality, though, we can give ourselves permission to jettison the junk because we can replace nearly all of our just-in-case items for less than $20 in less than 20 minutes with the 2020 rule. We'll put a link to the 2020 rule in the show notes as well, so you can figure out what that is. I think that's really helpful for a lot of folks. However, there are a few things we're certain we'll use in a definite or a definitive future, right? So there are a few things that are just for when items.
Right.
Nobody purchases their toilet paper one square at a time, their soap one droplet at a time, their toothpaste one nurdle at a time.
Is that what that's called?
Yeah. You're welcome. You all learned a new word today.
Nurdle.
I taught that to
You're a nurdle.
I taught that to my dentist and his staff last time I was in. Yeah, none of them even knew. But
that's great.
The reason I didn't know it's a marketing term, right? Nurdle is like Crest or someone came up with it. But yeah, the dab of toothpaste is a nurdle. But you don't buy your toothpaste one nurdle at a time, so you stockpile it, right?
Yeah.
Just for when. But it's not a just in case item. We buy a small stock of these products just for when we'll need them. The key to letting go, then, is to be honest about the trinkets we're clinging to just in case we might need them, and the goods we acquire just for when we will need them. If we do this properly, our excess begins to look a lot like junk, and it's easier to unload. So, Ryan, I know for me that I would justify holding on to all the stuff that James is justifying right now, right?
Yeah.
And it's so easy. We can make up a million excuses in our mind. I'm gonna hold on, and I do it. I still do it now, where I'm like, just give it a little bit more time. And there are rules that have helped me. The 90-90 rule is one that's really helpful for me, because it's a little bit of a check for me, where I'm like, okay, have I used it in the last 90 days? And in a little bit, we're gonna talk about some of the collections that you and I struggle with personally, but this rule helps me look at those collections and say, okay, I need to be able to be honest with myself here.
Yeah.
Not anyone else. Because I'm not holding on to these things, and I'm not getting rid of these things for anyone else. I'm doing it so that I can get this excess out of the way.
Yeah. And I just want to reiterate too, man, that it's not. If James wants to hold on to the Hobbit book, fine. James, hold on to your Hobbit book. If you want to hold on to the consoles, fine. But like Josh said, be honest with yourself. But when it comes to any of these collectibles, I know in my life, I have to set some boundaries up. So if there's something there that you absolutely feel is necessary to hold on to, Josh and I support you. We also support you letting it go. But ultimately, if you do have something that you just can't let go of, then put some boundaries up for yourself to help keep things in check. It sounds like he's doing a great job organizing his phone and stuff, and I think that's what James is looking for. He's looking for a little bit of a organizational tip, because he doesn't want to get rid of everything,
right? And
he also doesn't want to hoard.
Yeah.
So he's trying to find that balance, and I think when we set those boundaries up, it helps us find that balance.
And a few things here that he mentioned to think about. I mean, the book is not the problem. The mindset is the problem, don't you think? I mean, he said, what do you say here? I have things tucked away in storage under my bed, here and there. That there's a particular mindset that leads to that.
Sure.
The just in case
Yeah,
mindset.
oh, absolutely.
Now, he also said, though, here's the justification. I'm not sure how much value I get out of it. When I say something like that to myself,
it's a good indicator.
I'm
exactly how much value you aren't getting out of it, really.
Because when I did that little exercise, that game with Ella and Bex, and we were walking around, like, I knew right away the things I get the most value out of. Like, there was no question they make my life better.
Right.
Do these things make your life better, James? If not, then maybe it's time to think about letting go. And if you're wondering how to let go, for me, I think there are 4 steps on how to let go, because that's really ultimately what you're asking here. How do I let go? Well, the first step is understand the what. Like, what are you letting go of? For him, it's the book, right?
Or the consoles or
right.
whatever, yeah.
So what is the what? But then what are you really letting go of? It's not the book you're letting go of. It's this mindset. It's the inclination, the clinging is really what you're letting go of. And then understand the why. Why are you letting go of this? Are you trying to free up time for your health, or you just want more space in your home? Why are you letting go? And then determine the how after that. Too often we look for the how. We're just looking for, how do I let go of all these things? But if you just know the how, then of course you'll just fill the house back up again if you don't understand why you're letting go and what you're really letting go of. Yeah. And then know that you'll never fully be ready to let go. I mean, if you wait until you're absolutely ready, you're just going to keep waiting.
Yeah.
And
it's funny because you don't realize you're ready until you've already letting that thing go.
Right, exactly. And so if you were 100% ready, you would have already let go, right? And then finally, the last thing is, the easiest way to let go is to not bring it in the first place. And then going forward, once you've started the process of letting go, be really careful. Scrutinize the things that you're bringing back into your life.
Yeah.
Because you never know when you're going to want to get rid of them in the future. Those things that you bring in become a burden really quickly. And I'm reminded of this tweet.
It's easy to bring stuff in, man. It's so easy to just say yes, and yes, I'm going to hold on to that. I mean, letting go is the hardest part.
We got this tweet, Ryan. We're at the Minimalists on Twitter, and man, you're going to love this one. This one's from Val at InValerie5 says, "A very good day to you all. Thanks a lot for sharing such brilliant ideas. Very useful for all, especially for Rwandan people." So the Val is in Rwanda. "Building a nation from scratch after the genocide of 1994. We shouldn't waste or misuse the little we have." And so
that's really encouraging.
It's funny. We often get emails or messages from places like Rwanda.
Yeah.
Or from Kenya. "Hey, can you come do a tour stop here?" And it's like, man, I don't even know.
It's like going to a monastery and like talking to monks.
Right. And it feels that way. But the truth is, the difference between the monks is they're doing that intentionally, right?
True. Yeah, very true.
And people in Rwanda, after they lost everything during the genocide. Absolutely. Yeah. But when you're forced into it, or if you're not forced into it, you can then, once you're recovering, once you're healing, that's what James is looking for, a type of healing, is getting rid of this stuff. You have to be careful about what you bring back in. And that's what Val in Rwanda is saying right now is, hey, this is now an opportunity for us to be really careful about what we bring into our lives and realize that this idea of the American dream isn't going to make us happier.
Right. Amen.
Well, James, I'd love to send you a copy of our book, Everything That Remains. It's Ryan's and my story of 5 years from being the suit and tie corporate guys to jettisoning everything, applying these simple rules to our lives, and letting go of what was not essential. So it's Everything That Remains. It's a memoir about that 5-year journey. And I'd love for you to have a copy. Sean, if you could reach out to James and send him the audiobook. If you like our podcast, you'll love the audiobook version of Everything That Remains. It's my favorite thing that we've ever done, that book. But also, if you'd rather have the book version or the ebook version, James, we'll be happy to send those to you as well. All right, y'all, we'd love to hear what you have to say. So if you have a comment or a tip about collectibles, including advice for our audience today or any advice for James as well, leave us a voicemail, 406-219-7839. You can also email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. We'll air our favorite comments and tips on a future episode. It's my favorite part of the show, so stay tuned to the end of this episode for this week's listener comments and tips. Ryan, what time is it?
It is time for our lightning round, where we answer questions from social media.
We're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We're at The Minimalists on those platforms. During the lightning round, this is where Ryan and I each do our best to answer every question with just a short, shareable, less than 140 character response. We also put the text to these minimal maxims in the show notes so you can copy and share our pithy answers on social media if you'd like. And now you can find all of our quotes in one place, minimalmaxims.com.
Indeed. All right, our first lightning round question is from Loda. Are collectibles best when they're stored away or when they're displayed?
Yes. I mean, it really depends on you, right?
I had the beholder, right?
My snarky, pithy answer is collectibles are best collected in a museum. I mean, ultimately, they are the best collectors of stuff, best curators of
They're
stuff.
professional collectors.
Right.
Like, they've literally went to school to learn how to curate things.
Exactly. And so... Here's the thing. If something is stored and never used, that's a form of hoarding, right?
Yeah.
And I mean literally, if it's never used. Now, if you're holding on to something because, well, I really want my children to have this when they turn 18, then maybe you have a specific use. Then you might have to ask yourself some other difficult questions,
Right.
like, do they really want this? Is this appropriate for me to hold on to this for this long, etc.? Yeah. But a collection, to me, if you are going to get value from it, the best way to get value from it is to use it in some way. Now, that could be a beautiful piece of art or a bookshelf. If you look at my bookshelves at my house, they look great. They look like pieces of art. A lot of people have commented on our living room conversations videos, and look at those bookshelves, they look great. Well, that's the point. I want them to be functional, and I use them. I actually store books on them, but also they look good in the space as well. And to me, that's the best sort of collection. If you can have something that is useful but also looks great, then I think you win on both sides.
Absolutely. Here's what I would tell Loda. Getting behind the why of collecting will help you hold on tighter, or it will help you let go faster. So really, Loda, it's the eye of the beholder. You keep your things hidden, you keep them out of display, that's fine. That's to me, that's not the important question. The important question is why are you holding on to those things? And if it is a collection that you find beauty in, then yeah, absolutely, display it. But ultimately, getting behind that why, like you were talking about earlier, it's going to help us, hold on tighter, or it's going to help us let go faster.
It doesn't do any good sitting up there in your attic, your basement, or under your bed.
Amen. All right, Sierra writes in, what do you do if you have a collection that brings you joy, but you are embarrassed to display it? We're talking about dildo collection, right? Is that what we're talking about here?
It's so funny, man. Jordan was in my house last week filming a we were doing this home tour for YouTube, right? And he was just doing the B-roll section because I wasn't feeling very good. And Ella and Bex were there, and we were just playing around a little bit. And I said, "Oh, you got free reign." And he's like, "Is there anywhere you don't want me to film?" I'm like, "Well, we have one box in our closet. It's a really nice looking box, and it is full of sex toys, which I've talked about on the sex podcast with Dr. Christopher Ryan."
This is a great example of you have a collection of sex toys, and you have a boundary set up for it.
Right, but I'm also not ashamed.
Of course not.
There's a difference between shame and private. Now, is this, to me, it is a collection. I don't even look at it as a collection because I'm not collecting them. They're. I don't have a collection of kitchen utensils either. I have, know what I'm saying?
Yeah, they're not collector items. Oh yeah, I do. I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I mean but technically in your drawer it is a collection of silverware. Yeah, I mean in the sense that we're talking about for today's episode. Yeah, you're not.
I'm not collecting them. I'm using them.
You don't have like, things in there that are still in the package,
right?
And you're like, this is never coming out of the package.
No,
this is a collector's item. This is the Star Wars. No, I'm not even gonna go there.
They're utensils, right? And they're sex utensils essentially. actually, because we use
I
them.
love that band, Sex Utensils.
And if I don't use them, then we get rid of them. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we'll share that bit for the Patreon subscribers, Jordan.
Yeah.
But the thing is, like, I'm not ashamed of it, and so I want to talk to Sierra for a second. My pithy answer for you, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. If you're embarrassed by your things, either get rid of them or let go of the embarrassment. And there was certainly a point in my life where I would have been very embarrassed by having a box of sex toys, especially as a minimalist. How does a minimalist, like, I thought you would just have missionary and that's it. The thing is, though, like, for me, these are things that we get value from. Bex and I really enjoy augmenting the experience, right? And so when I look at that, I can't be embarrassed by the fact that I get enjoyment and pleasure out of sexual intercourse with the person I love. And so I had to let go of the embarrassment, right?
Yeah.
And so it seems to me like, Sierra, maybe if you're anything like me, then you might be ashamed of your identity. There's a difference between shame and guilt. Guilt says something about your actions. Shame says something about who you are as a person. And right now, there might be an incongruity. You might have two different selves like I used to. I used to have professional JFM and personal JFM, and personal JFM wanted to be a writer, but I was ashamed of that in the professional world because any bit of creativity in the business world was not tolerated, right? Any work outside of the 80-hour work weeks was not tolerated. So I was ashamed and I repressed it. And it sounds to me like you might have to deal with the repression. Otherwise, you're going to have to get rid of the stuff that you're ashamed of, and hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah. Sierra, there's no rule that says you have to publicly display everything in your life that brings you joy. So, all I'm saying here is that maybe she does maybe it is a collection of dildos, and she doesn't want those to be out for her grandmother to see them. I mean, that's totally...
That's acceptable.
Yeah,
I think.
It's acceptable, meaning that, Sierra, yes, ask yourself if you are ashamed of something or if you're just trying to stay private. And if you're just trying to keep something private, I mean, there are many things. Josh and I, we are try to be as transparent and open as possible, but there are certainly private things that Josh and I keep part of our lives. Absolutely. And Sierra, it's okay to do that if you want.
And I think that the word you use there, transparent, is important. To me, there are sort of three layers of truth, right? That there's the truth, which is the sort of first layer, what's right and wrong. And then there's openness. So the first layer is like, I'm not going to lie to you, right?
Right.
The second layer is I'm going to be open with you about everything. The third is I'm going to be transparent with you.
Yeah.
I'm not completely transparent with our audience. Like, you don't know my social security number, but if I was 100% transparent,
sure,
I'd give you my social security number.
Right.
Well, no, that's something that's private. I don't allow cameras into my bedroom while Bex and I are going at it. Hey. Well,
no.
Please no one hack my iCloud.
The one thing
here's the weird thing.
Yeah.
If someone did hack my iCloud and like saw the videos,
I wouldn't. Yeah.
No, I wouldn't even be that embarrassed by it. I'd just be like, oh, okay, so what?
Whatever.
Yeah. I mean, it's like but I don't feel the need. I don't feel compelled to share those with the world either.
Yeah. The other thing too I want to tell Sierra is embarrassment. You said it's a sign that maybe she is ashamed. I think embarrassment also is the fear of being judged, and ultimately, it might be a good test, Sierra. Like, if it's something that you feel like, if it's something that you want support on, if this collection of yours is something that you want your friends to support you on,
right, then
I would put it out in the open, and it actually would be a good test to see which friends are really, really there to support all your quirks, your imperfections, warts and all.
And it'll bring out some difficult conversation.
Yeah.
If someone starts judging you, you can just look at them curiously and say, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do you realize you're judging me right now? Is there a reason? Can we talk about this? 'Cause I'm really feeling judged right now.
Right. Yeah.
And don't do it in an accusatory way or argumentative way. You don't have to be combative, but you can be communicative. And you know what? It might even strengthen your relationships, and it might make them realize their judgment. And
absolutely,
that all of a sudden they will let down their barriers as well, and it might improve the relationship as a result. P.S. Ryan, we have 3 more questions. questions.
Nice.
And here is my favorite one of the day. Are there any collections that Joshua and Ryan still struggle with?
I almost talked about this on that first question, but I decided to save that answer for this postscript.
Yeah, so that one is going to be there was one that Bex and I actually had to talk about, and it has nothing to do with the box of sex toys. I don't struggle with that at all. But there is a collection that I called myself out on, and Bex is like, yeah, totally, you do struggle with that. We were talking about this week, and so I want to share that with you all. Also, Sunita asks, what are your non-materialistic alternatives to collectibles? And I've got a few answers for that one. I'm sure Ryan does as well. We have one other question from Proud Mama. She says, what is the difference between collectibles and not being able to let go of the past? My husband refuses to let go of objects that remind him of his childhood, and it's making it very difficult for me as a minimalist. It literally takes up our whole closet because he won't let go.
Man.
And we're going to talk about all three of those questions. If you'd like to hear our answers, you can listen to this week's postscript episode over at the Minimalist Private Podcast. That is right. Every week we record an additional podcast episode, and it's available exclusively to our Patreon subscribers. We're able to, Ryan lets his hair down a little bit on the Patreon. I loosen my...
I get a blowout.
I loosen my tie clip.
Yeah.
My clip-on tie, perhaps.
Yeah.
No, we are a little bit more private on that one, and we were able to dive a little bit deeper into some listener questions there over on Patreon. So if you want to support our show and keep this podcast 100% advertisement free, then head on over to theminimalists.com/support. In addition to our weekly postscript episodes, the Minimalist Private Podcast feed includes our Ask the Minimalists Anything episodes, unreleased recordings of our live events, and the entire back catalog of past private episodes. And once you become a subscriber, you'll also receive a personal link to our private podcast feed so that it plays in your normal podcast player. You know, the podcast player you're using to listen to this episode right now. You can find all the details and all the good stuff, including an additional podcast episode every week over at theminimalists.com/support. And here is a snippet from this week's postscript episode. Here's the thing. If I want to go shop for something, like a jacket, let's say, I mean, usually I'll buy it from a retailer like Mission Workshop that I already know and trust. But even if I'm walking by a place, and I know I'm looking specifically for an item, I'll go there for that item. Essentially, have a list of one item, or if I'm grocery shopping, buy only what's on the list. Don't go and just say, I'm just gonna go check out, see what's on sale.
Yeah.
That is a way to have a collection run amok without even realizing it. And all of a sudden, you're like, man, how did I get so many clothes in my closet? Well, it's because I went shopping for them as opposed to shopping for a specific item. All right, now it's time for our added value portion of the show. This is where we each talk about something that has added value to our lives recently. Ryan, I was driving around at night in LA. It was during the holidays. We're going to talk about the holidays here in a second, because this is the first time we're back officially. And although you're in LA for a day, I think, right now.
Dude, it's been a whirlwind.
We'll talk about that right here, right now. But
yeah.
I was driving around at night, and LA usually has a lot of traffic, but during the holidays, it eases up significantly.
Dude,
and you're like, oh, this must be what it was like to live here in 1983 or something.
So wonderful, dude.
And as I was driving around, I was listening to Meek Mill's new album, and the first song he has a sample of Phil Collins in the air tonight.
I can feel it.
Yeah, and so I just put on the Essential Phil Collins. So
the Meek Mill album.
I'm not recommending the Meek Mill album, although it's good.
But it inspired you to listen to the Phil Collins album.
Yes, of course. And here's the thing. Phil Collins makes the best driving at night music, period.
I can see that.
There is, and I think Podcast Sean will agree with me. Sean is a fellow drummer, and I say fellow like I have anything to do with it. I've never even touched a drumstick. But he's a huge Phil Collins fan. But driving around at night, I was with Bex and Ella, and we were just driving from the airport back home, and it's a 45-minute drive or whatever, but you were able to do it in 30 minutes during the holidays. And man, it's just beautiful. Open road, Phil Collins at night. essential Phil Collins. Another album I've been listening to recently.
Dude, I gotta download that, man.
Yeah, it's really good. I think you can find it wherever you get music. It's just essential Phil Collins. One of my I don't know how I missed this album last year. It came out last year. The lead singer of Slow Runner, Michael Flynn.
Oh.
So such an underrated band. One of the best bands of all time is a band called Slow Runner.
Yeah.
They're from Charleston, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Michael Flynn put out, and not the political Michael Flynn. He's just, his name happens to be Michael Flynn. But
put out a solo album.
oh my gosh.
That's the second, right?
Second,
I was I know he did another one.
The new one is called Pretend Like. And the first song is the lead single from it is called Greater Charlotte. The writing on it, and this is different from all his previous, all his previous music is sort of like sad, upbeat music, which is weird. Like the writing, although actually a lot of it's just upbeat when he talks about you make me sing to the houseplants or you make me auto happy. Like there are all these like really upbeat love songs, and on here, something must have happened to him. He must have gone through some sort of breakup. And man, the writing on it is just so gorgeous. In fact, Sean, maybe we end this episode with Greater Charlotte. Unless you're watching this on YouTube, then you'll have to click the link that Jordan puts in the video. But the album is called Pretend Like, and it's by Michael Flynn.
Cool.
And it is just gorgeous.
Awesome, man.
What about you? What's been adding value to your life?
Well, let's see. I just got back from Florida. My grandfather passed away. It's funny, man. It was kind of expected in the sense that he was 81. So any time that I have spent time around my Oma and my Opa, I just kind of tell myself like 5 more years. If we can just get 5 more years out of them.
Wow.
And so that's kind of the expectation I've been having for the last couple years. So it doesn't make it super easy when someone dies that you love, but I guess it takes the edge off a little bit, I guess. But anyway, being down there reminded me of how grateful I am for Mariah's and I's process on keeping track of important documents and being prepared for an unlikely accident or whatever, an unlikely event where if Mariah needs access to power of attorney or title to my car or whatever it is, like we know exactly where to go. So I guess I'm going to recommend, I guess this is technically 2 recommendations. There is an essay we wrote. It's called Scared to Death About Death. It's theminimalists.com/death. And it has a really good recipe there on how anyone can prepare for death, essentially. And that's something that we all have to consider.
And we are scared to death of even talking about death, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I know people who won't even talk to their significant other, and so I don't know what position you were in when you were going through. If he did, sounds like he didn't have a lot of this stuff sorted out, right?
I mean, everything was okay. I think the biggest angst right now is we cannot find the titles to the cars. So that said, though, it took us, I was there 4 or 5 days, and for 4 or 5 days, my aunt, my uncle, my Oma, Mariah, and I, we were digging through just boxes and boxes of papers and records looking for different things, and we found most of it except for the car titles. But I guess that brings me to kind of the second recommendation is get a filing cabinet. Get a filing cabinet that locks or a lockbox. He had lockboxes.
Oh no!
And he had briefcases that locked.
Have a place where you can go where all that stuff is. In fact,
yes.
I'll even add a step further. One thing that Bex and I will do, I want to say once a year, but I've probably made her go through it because I'm morbid, like 3 times this past year. I'm like, all right, pretend I'm dead. I'll just go lay on the floor. Yeah. And I'm like, where are all the documents? Where are the documents? Where do you find?
Is that what she's into? I didn't realize that.
Hey, it's only for our Patreon subscribers.
Oh.
No, you know what? We will go through the exercise and jokingly, yes, sometimes I'll lay on the floor and be like, all right, pretend I'm dead. Now, where do you find the password to my phone, to my computer, to my email? And she has all of these. We have a spreadsheet of passwords all there, but also a locked cabinet with all of our documents, my power of attorney, my last will and testament, my living will, etc. And so all of that links to all that stuff, and you can use whatever place you want to use. I think I use LegalZoom for all of it, not an ad. They have never given me any money to talk about them.
Or even if it's just like you've uploaded to the cloud yourself. I mean,
right. But we have a couple links in the minimalists.com/death. So that's a good place to go, so that you have a peace of mind. You're paying for a peace of mind, and it's not that expensive.
Dude, my Oma, like, she even said, she's like, oh man, like, this really makes me wonder how prepared the family is for when I go. And it's like helped her, reminder for her to be like, oh, I need to make sure all my things are in order. So people, you got to prepare for death.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you probably got a long, long life ahead of you, but you still got to prepare.
One thing I just signed up for is term life insurance, and we're going to sign up. I just talked to an insurance guy, business life insurance this year, because those are also things. Making sure that you have those things in order in case I were to die. I want to make sure that you have something to keep the minimalists going, and I want to make sure Bex is taken care of. And so having some term life insurance is another thing, and that's all there in my file cabinet, right? And so Bex has instant access to that.
Absolutely.
If she needs it. All right, let's move on to right here, right now, where we talk about what's going on in the lives of the minimalists.
Yeah, man. I see you got Christmas and New Year's, but I talked to my dad. I want to start this catching up with seeing my dad. So we were just in Florida, and my dad came down because it's an emergency. And I'll tell you, man, it was very hard for me to.
You and your dad haven't been communicating for a while.
Right, yeah, okay, yeah, sorry. I should probably catch people up on what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So my dad and I haven't talked in almost a year.
If you haven't listened to the parents episode, which was a while ago.
Check it out.
Yeah.
So just the cliff note would be, a year ago, my dad called me up and said, hey, just to let you know, your stepmother showed me this Bible verse that says that we shouldn't even be having meals with you. So don't plan on ever having a meal with me ever again. Unless he lays out his things that he needs me to do so he can have a meal with me. Don't call me unless it's an emergency. So this is where it started. And I was like,
I'm
Dad,
sorry to laugh because this sounds, it's so absurd.
I know.
Like it's hard to not laugh at it.
It's crazy. So I was like, I said, okay, if that's the case, then, I sent him this long email like, dude, we can't talk anymore. Like, I'm sorry, but every time I talk to you, it is a judgment. It is you're giving me ultimatums. There's nothing encouraging about our communication. You are just tearing me down. So I do not foster relationships when that's what the relationship does to my life. And, like we talk about, the superpower we have now is the power of letting go. Yeah. And even with, that relationship with my father, I can recognize like, it's not that he's just not helping, or it's not that he's not supportive, but he's the exact opposite. So we were down in Florida, and I'll tell you, man, like, it was very emotional. But what I'll say are two things. I want to give my dad credit for totally being there in an emergency. And yes, they were avoiding eating meals with us. I mean, it's really insulting, but by and large, it wasn't that bad. That's what my dad kept saying. This isn't that bad. And I'm like, okay, like that's fine. And we kind of had a conversation, but I guess what I really want our audience to take away from this is when my grandfather died and my dad came down and there's this emergency situation in the family, the ability to be respectful, the ability to be cordial, the ability to not let out all the visceral feelings I have.
Not be combative.
To not be combative. Because
you feel like that's what you want to do, right?
Oh, yeah, man. Like, in fact, there was one particular night that we had a conversation. And
your dad?
Yeah, okay. And we were talking about all these things that that's been on my mind for the last year. And the other thing I want to give my dad credit for is when I get emotional, especially with a conversation, and especially with someone who I feel so comfortable with, I interrupt a lot. Yeah. It's hard for me to remember to be respectful during conversations like that. And my dad was very patient with me, and he would even be like, "Hey, you can say what you want, but you kind of interrupted me there. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. But I guess, coming at it in a sense of trying to be respectful, not being combative, I just realized like I could talk to my worst enemy if I keep those two things at heart. And, we had some pretty good conversations, and, I just pretty much was like, hey man, I hope I don't have to wait till the next funeral to see you.
Wow.
I hope there's something else that we can work out, and we're still working through our stuff, but just that takeaway of just trying to be respectful, man. Like, it really helped everything be peaceful, and it really helped. It was most importantly, it helped my Oma. It helped her the most, and that's what I really appreciate about it. So
I think it's good that you're able to set that aside, because my opinion of your father has dropped dramatically over the last year or two. And we don't have to go into details in public. In fact, maybe we could talk about some stuff on the postscript. Yeah.
Maybe.
In fact, I had a pretty traumatic Christmas and New Year's Eve, like the most traumatic of my life.
So I just want everyone listening to this know that Josh came to me on like December 26th. And he was like, dude, I had the craziest Christmas experience. I can't wait to talk to you about it on the podcast.
Yeah.
The day that we're recording this is January 8th. I've been in anticipation for the last 2 weeks.
Well, you got to wait a little bit longer. I'm gonna save it for the postscript, because I need a safer space than this.
All right.
And I just don't want all the tweets to come. We have hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who listen to this thing, and I'm gonna save it for the postscript to talk about Christmas and New Year's Eve.
You just love making me hang on, don't you?
I am headed to Montana this week, and so are you. So by the time you're listening to this, by the time this comes out, Ella's having a head surgery. So everyone think about her and send her a nice tweet. She's at Ella Sandwich on Twitter if you want to tweet her, and she says the craziest things. We got so many great tweets from her this week. She's having head surgery, and so we have a good surgeon up there.
Awesome, man.
It was a terrible story. When she was about 6 months old, she was in daycare, and they were negligent, and they left her in this mesh crib and unsupervised for several minutes, and she just kept rubbing her head against the mesh, trying to escape essentially. And it looks like she has male pattern baldness right here in the spot on the top of her head. A huge bloody scar for months and months and months, and now we have to get it fixed. She's in kindergarten now, and now's the right time to get it fixed, because we don't want her to feel ostracized by other kids. And we usually, whenever you see pictures of her and stuff, she always has her hair up because of that. There's this huge bald spot there. So we're gonna take care of that this week. But I think it'll be great. It's gonna be great for her.
Yeah.
And then of course I'll talk about my traumatic holidays on the postscript. We have it's a new year, and a lot of people. This is the month where a lot of people start writing again. And I can tell you the best decision that Ryan and I ever made was the fall of 2010. We started a blog.
Yeah.
It ended up being a great financial decision for us too, because it led to books and tours and this podcast and a documentary.
Yeah, it's funny when you say financial situation though. It's not like the blog makes us money.
No, and that's the thing.
It's more about it gave us a public voice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it gave us a public voice to those first 52 readers who showed up, which were basically just Facebook friends and stuff. And the first year or two, 2011, 2012, we had so many people asking us, like, how did you start your blog? It looks beautiful. And eventually we wrote an essay called How to Start a Successful Blog, because we had amassed a decent sized audience, several thousand people at that point, and more and more people kept asking about it. Well, we just updated it for 2019, all new screenshots and everything. And if you're interested in starting your own blog, if you're interested in just improving your writing habit, blogging is the best thing to do.
Yeah.
Just writing a weekly blog, developing that habit is really important. You can do that relatively inexpensively or even free. I mean, WordPress itself is free. Hosting it somewhere is a couple bucks a month. But it's one of the cheapest ways for you to create this habit. And if you want a step-by-step guide on how you can set up a blog in less than an hour, and don't spend the 100 hours that Ryan and I spent trying to figure out HTML and realizing that wasn't the way to go, head on over to theminimalists.com/blog. It's called How to Start a Successful Blog. and it's updated for 2019. That's out there right now. Also, I wanted to bring this up, Ryan. It's been 5 years this month since our good friend Stan Dukes passed away. We did a whole episode about Stan. We'll put a link to it in the show notes if you want to. We had a tearful conversation a couple years ago. I think it was January of, maybe that was 2017, something like that.
2016. Because we were in Missoula,
it was
right?
2017.
Oh,
yeah,
anyway.
yeah. But we did a conversation. But it's been 5 years now, and so we wrote this essay, or I wrote this essay when we were on tour. We were just starting our crazy 100-city tour, January 2014, and I want to just recognize Stan, but also we have some really great life lessons from him.
Yeah.
And they're especially applicable to me right now with some of the trauma that I've been going through and in my own health. So let's read this. This is called Live Like Stan. The traffic light hanging above our car is a blur of red. The tears are burning my eyes. Ryan is seated in the passenger seat next to me. He too is teary-eyed. It's the eve of our big 100-city book tour. The Florida sun has already set behind the Tampa Bay. Nightfall is upon us now. By the time the traffic light changes, it's just a mess of wet green, a shapeless emerald cloud spilling into the nighttime ether. I received the call a moment earlier. The news: a week after Ryan avoided his own death. There's a whole separate essay about that. He got into a really bad car crash. A week after Ryan avoided his own death, one of my closest friends, Stanley Dukes, pictured above, is dead. This isn't going to be easy to write. Overwhelmed with unanswerable questions, I feel a canyon of sorrow. I can't see past the tears. He was only 36, so I'm compelled to pen 1,000 cliches. Life is too short. Every day is a gift. You never know when you're going to go, so live your life to the fullest. While all these truisms are apt, the truth is that Stan lived more in his 3.5 decades than most people could in 100 years. Stanley Dukes was a Mozart of positive living, and so his attenuated life was not in vain. Of course, this doesn't erase the pain, but it makes it easier to handle. We met in the corporate world a decade ago. At first, when I was a regional manager, Stan Dukes worked for me as a store manager. But he was so talented, and he added so much value to so many people's lives that I often felt as though I worked for him. Although he managed dozens of employees, his genius was most pronounced in his ability to inspire people who weren't self-motivated, which, if you know anything about leading people, is sort of like convincing water to be less wet. But somehow he did it, always carrying with him a smile and his positive mental attitude. As a result, he was one of the most successful managers in the company. I remember you and him, Ryan, would always battle it out for 1 and 2 out of all the store managers in the company for several years in a row. Over time, we became close friends. We shared similar values and beliefs, as well as tastes in literature and movies and music. I traded him my overwrought short stories for his hilarious pseudonymous erotic fiction. We exchanged lines from Glengarry Glen Ross characters, and we both shared a healthy obsession for John Mayer's music. We became so close that he is even the first person who makes an appearance in my memoir, Everything That Remains, where he pops his huge, lovable head into the very first page. And this is the short excerpt with Stan there from Everything That Remains. Our identities are shaped by the costumes I wear. I'm seated in a cramped conference room surrounded by ghosts in shirt sleeves and pleated trousers. There are 35, maybe 40 people here, middle managers, the lot of us, mostly Caucasian, mostly male, all oozing apathy. The group's median complexion is that of an agoraphobe. A Microsoft Excel spreadsheet is projected onto an oversized canvas pulled from the ceiling at the front of the room. The canvas is flimsy and cracked and is the shade of off-white that suggests it's a relic from a time when employees were allowed to smoke indoors. The rest of the room is aggressively white. The walls are white, the ceiling is white, the people are white, as if all cut from the same materials. Well, everyone except Stan. seated at the back of the room. Cincinnati's population is 45% black, but Stan is part of our company's single-digit percentage. His comments, rarely solicited by executives, are often dismissed with a nod and a pained smile. Although he's the size of an NFL linebacker, Stan is a paragon of kindness. But that doesn't stop me from secretly hoping that one day he'll get fed up with the patronizing grins and make it his duty to reformat one of the boss's fish-eyed faces. Return to the essay here. Of course, Stan would have never touched a hair on any of their balding heads. He was above that. He was above all the petty bullshit we get caught up in every day. He was above living life based on other people's standards. His standards were too high for that. He had character. Stan contributed beyond himself. Each year at Christmas time, he dressed up as Stanta and handed out gifts to our employees.
God, I forgot all about that until right now. He sure did.
Good old Stanta.
Yeah.
He spent many off hours donating his time to soup kitchens and Habitat for Humanity. Last year, he founded a mentorship conference for young men ages 13 to 18. Stan cared. When I decided to leave the corporate world 3 years ago, he didn't flinch. Instead, he was the first to join me. We walked away together, guided by solidarity and a kinship that's impossible to manufacture. Before I moved to Montana, we met for coffee weekly. Our visits yielded heartfelt advice on women and life, as well as arguments over which album was John Mayer's best, Heavier Things or Battle Studies. Jordan, by the way, it's definitely Heavier Things, just so you know. Jordan No More is also an avid John Mayer fan. What is your favorite? If you say Continuum, you're going to... The Search for Everything is your favorite John Mayer album?
Is that the first one?
It's not even an album.
Was that his first album?
It's four playlists.
Is that the one with
It's the brand new one. And
oh yeah, that's
it has a really great cover.
It's funny. Mine's I think my favorite one's Born and Raised, man. Only because
I like it a lot. It's a very Montana album.
I was gonna say,
but Paradise Valley is even more Montana.
Yeah, I was gonna say my second one's Paradise Valley, but that's because both of those albums came out when we lived in Montana, and Born and Raised came out like right when we moved to Montana.
Yeah.
And it was like this affirmation that I'm doing the right thing, man. We're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Shadow Days, the song Shadow Days in there is one of my favorite John Mayer songs. It's truly, truly great. Yeah. The Search for Everything, It was a rather just disjointed album. Like, it was all over the place for me. I think that was his intention, though. Obviously the title is The Search for Everything, right?
Oh my God, we're getting lost in the weeds.
Yeah, we are. Sorry. Thanks, Stan, wherever you are. All right, back to the text here. Everything about Stan reflected a profound truth. Even his simple tweets were steeped in profundity. I'm going to read some of his tweets here. These are in the essay. We'll put a link to this essay in the show notes if y'all want to share it. Here are some of Stan Dukes' tweets. And these are some of the most profound, especially in light of his death. A man can't walk out of his own story. I mean, these blow me away. I'm getting chills. Secure your own mask before assisting others. And that was really, like, I feel like Stan lived that. Like, he helped himself, but he also helped other people. But he helped himself. He knew he needed to have the best version of himself there to help other people. There's a bright spot in every shadow. It's the bitter and the sweet. I know the bitter that allows me to appreciate the sweet. Man, I've been living that recently. Only your actions can prove your worth. They tell people who you are. And finally, don't drown in conformity. And Stan definitely did not drown in conformity. He didn't drown in the status quo either. Countless essays on our site were inspired by my conversations with Stan. Our final conversation was mimetic of his life. It was short but meaningful. 3 days before Thanksgiving, I sent him a message. I don't have to wait till Thursday to be thankful for you. I'm grateful you're in my life. To which he replied succinctly, thanks for that. Know that I feel the same. Stan lived until he died. He truly lived. Every day. Not like most of us who walk through life like it's some kind of dress rehearsal, worrying about bullshit that doesn't matter. Nope. Stan was so alive. One of the only people I know who didn't take this life for granted. If there's a lesson to be learned here, it's that, like Stan, we're all going to die. But few of us will be courageous enough to live as he did. honest, well-rounded, passionate, positive, and constantly improving. Above all, Stan Dukes was good people, a man I aspire to live like. That green blur overhead is my signal to step on the gas, to wipe the tears and move forward. Perhaps you'll do likewise. I know Stan would.
Yeah, man. Well, thanks for making me all sad.
It's my job.
I miss him so much, man.
Me too. I know that we'd be working with him right now. He'd be out here in LA with us.
He'd be out in LA right now.
Yeah. He was 36, but really did live more in those. I mean, he's younger than. He was like the older, wiser version. I remember because, 5 years ago I was 32 and he was 36, and I looked up to him in many ways, and he looked up to me in some ways, and like we were mentors to each other. But man. Yeah, I miss him, but I'm grateful for the time that we had together.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about some changes that we're about to make coming up really, really soon. We have some exciting news for you all if you're a fan of our podcast, especially if you're a Patreon supporter. But even if you're not a Patreon supporter, this is some exciting news. We're going to make some slight changes to I want to say format of the podcast, but the format itself is going to stay relatively unchanged. So let's talk about this exciting news that we have, Ryan. You and I have been talking for the last month or two about sharing some more in-depth conversations, some more personal conversations. So in March 2019, so that's right around the corner, a month and a half away, right? The Minimalist podcast, the one you're listening to right now, the popular free public version, is changing its format so we can produce some more meaningful and more intimate, private, and personal podcast episodes for our Patreon subscribers. And why are we doing this, you ask? Well, Ryan and I have had a lot of conversations about that, and we've also talked to Jordan and Podcast Sean about this. And there are some topics that we want to discuss semi-privately. You know how like a stand-up comic, we'll go to like the comedy store, and some comics are working on brand new material, and it doesn't always land, but sometimes it lands perfectly, and you can tell they're working out some stuff. And and for us, we want to be able to work out some stuff and work out some conversations, some semi-private conversations in front of a small, empathetic, understanding group of people. Conversations we'd have with trusted friends. And we need that group of trusted friends. And because our Patreon subscribers are the people who support our work the most, we believe that our Patreon subscribers are the best people to share these conversations with, not the entire world. Now, we'll refine some stuff, and then it will make its way back out into the main podcast feed as well, and to other creations. But Patreon is really going to be the place where we start having some in-depth conversations, longer form podcasts, so to speak. So,
well, it's interesting because the way we've been approaching this is the hour and a half to sometimes 3 hour long podcasts.
Right.
Those are what we dish out.
Right.
And then with Patreon, we're like, oh, here's a bonus question. And it's like a 10-minute episode.
Yeah.
And it's like, looking at that model, it seems inverse.
Yeah. And what I've noticed is people really like, for the last month or so, we've been doing a little bit longer episodes on Patreon, 20, 30, 40-minute episodes on Patreon, and people from our Patreon audience really, really enjoy that. And because, you're able to listen to the Minimalist private podcast feed in your normal podcast player, and it really does feel like it feels looser, and it feels like, we're just having this conversation. I remember the first tour we did back in 2011, and like 20 people would gather around, and we never felt too self-conscious about what we were saying because we were just having these conversations with this group of people instead of a million people who might be listening to the podcast. And so we want to be able to think out loud in front of a small group of people who are willing to give us the leeway to grow and fail and change our minds in real time. And we need to be able to talk about our failed habits, our family lives, things like we talk about with your dad, and I'm sure we'll dive deeper in today's postscript episode. Yeah. Our struggles, our personal relationships, our emotions, our insecurities, without fear of judgment or public ridicule, right? I mean, the thing is, judgment is obviously real, but there's some real sensitive things we want to be able to talk about, right? And so we believe that Patreon is the place for us to delve into sensitive subjects, difficult discussions, and occasionally lighten things up with our chowder-headed tomfoolery.
We think we're funny.
And Patreon is the best way for us to fund our podcast as well and keep it 100% advertisement free, because that's one thing that we agreed on from the beginning. We don't want to just pepper in a whole bunch of advertisements about mattresses and underwear and stuff. It's not us judging other people for doing that. It doesn't align with what we want to produce here. And so this is a great way for us to make the podcast 100% advertisement free, and then also keep the main feed free for everyone who wants to indulge in that. So next month, that's February 2019, the Minimalist podcast, the main feed, is taking a month off. We're taking a month off from the public podcasts. So we're still going to record 4 private podcast episodes for our Patreon audience in February. So if you want to listen to the podcast, still support our show in February, the only place to do that will be on Patreon, because we're going to take the month off from the Minimalists feed. The 4 episodes that we're going to, and we could really use your questions, Patreon supporters. We're going to record 4 episodes, one about products, one about happiness, one about branding. So the products one is sort of like, what products do we find value in? But then also, what products are we being sold that we think we get value from? And we've got some really good articles to discuss in these as well. The happiness episode, there's some science, some new science about happiness and what makes us happy. And I want to talk about that with Ryan and see if we agree or disagree on that. The branding episode, there's some interesting stuff going on with branding recently and the advertisers who sell these brands to us, and some questions I have about, I think all of us are brands to some extent now.
Sure.
And we're branding ourselves online. We're trying to put our best foot forward. Follow me on Twitter @JFM. This is my brand.
Yeah.
But is it authentic? And what does authentic even mean in today's world, right? And also, we're going to do an episode on gentrification, which is a very sensitive subject.
God, dude.
But man, I've got some really great articles to discuss. In some places, it's a really big problem. In some places, it is the opposite of a problem. Like, you actually have to hope for gentrification. And let's talk about why it may be useful in certain places. So we're going to do those 4 episodes. So if you have questions about these topics, you can leave them for us on Patreon. Then beginning in March, after we take the month off of the main podcast, the Minimalist podcast, the popular free public version, will return with 30-minute episodes. So shorter episodes using the same format. So similar to our current format, we're going to answer voicemail questions. We're going to have lightning round questions, added value right here, right now. Just going to be more attenuated. We're going to call these a minimal episode, and we're going to try and do it in less than 30 minutes every week.
Yeah.
And in doing so, it's that creative restraint. It might build something beautiful. And strangely, a lot of people have actually asked for this. And large chunks of our audience have asked, hey, why don't you make the episode shorter? And I know I've been snarky and said, well, it's as short as you want it to be. And it's never going to be short enough for everyone. That's not the reason we're doing it, but it is going to help some people who are like, I really would love to have a 30-minute episode every week instead of these 2-hour behemoths. Yeah. But if you want an additional episode on top of that, that's what we're going to do. Everything else is on Patreon. So each week we'll record an additional 60-plus minute episode on Patreon about the topic we're discussing that week. So maybe we're doing a discussion about decluttering, right? And so we'll do the 30-minute episode about decluttering, but then we'll dive deep into patrons' questions. And there'll be a few different tiers and more details on that coming soon. We're going to call those longer episodes 60-plus minutes. It might be 90 minutes. It might be 2 hours. Who knows how long we'll go. We'll call those the maximal episodes. And so if you want the free minimal, you still get that. You still get our podcast. You download it, you listen to it, still be 100% advertisement free. And if you want to dive deep with us and enjoy some of these more intimate conversations, you can do that as well. We're also going to add a new segment. This was Ryan's idea. It's a segment called More About Less. Each week during our Patreon-only maximal episode, we'll read about a current event that ties directly or indirectly to minimalism. Then we'll share our opinions, and because Ryan and I both have different points of view, sometimes radically different points of view, politically or
that's what keeps it interesting, man.
Exactly. It's not just us. We're not parroting each other. We have parody with a lot of things in our life because we have the same values, but we have different beliefs, different points of view politically and spiritually and emotionally. So we'll probably disagree on many of the topics we discuss over there on Patreon, but I'm sure you won't mind if mommy and daddy argue a little bit as long as we hug it out afterward. We got more details coming next month on these Patreon-only episodes. If you're interested in signing up for that, you can head on over right now to theminimalists.com/support. You can find a link to our Patreon account there, or you can go directly to Patreon. It's just patreon.com/theminimalists. We really appreciate your support, y'all.
Amen.
All right, what else do we have here? You can comment on this episode today at youtube.com/theminimalists. Speaking of YouTube, we're ending season 2 of Living Room Conversations. I think we're 50 episodes into Living Room Conversations. The first season was 30 episodes. Second season, about 20 or 21 episodes. And you can go catch up on all of those now. We may embark on a season 3 sometime in the future. I don't know when. The theme of this year is subtract for us. So we're finding ways to subtract. In fact, we're going to do an episode about subtracting. And really, that's what we're looking to do, is subtract a little bit. So we're pulling back on Living Room Conversations for a while. There's 50 of them out there. If you haven't seen all 50 of them, now's the time for you to go back and find the ones that interest you most. youtube.com/theminimalists. If you want our show notes in your email inbox, sign up for our email list over at theminimalists.com, and you'll also receive our Simple Sundays emails each week. We've got some tips or essays or different writings about simplicity each week over at theminimalists.com. Just go there, enter your email address at the top. And speaking of simple, it's your last chance to sign up for a simple year. It's 12 months of guided simplicity. If you go to theminimalists.com/simple year, it's a course with 12 different experts. Ryan and I guess it's 13 experts, because you and I we do 1 month. So the 12 months of guided simplicity, 12 different topics throughout 2019. And it's the last chance. January's last chance to sign up. Theminimalists.com/simple year. Of course, I don't think you need to sign up. You don't need a book or a course to simplify your life, but if you feel like you need a little bit of help, then maybe 12 months of guided simplicity is for you. Ryan, what else you got for us?
As always, I just want to encourage people to read more and get informed. And now, here are some voicemail comments and tips from our listeners. Check them out.
Hi, guys. My name is Ian, and I'm from Boston, Mass. I have a tip for a caller named John who was on the Hope podcast. He said he wasn't noticing any benefits from decluttering. My advice to him would be to, once the room is decluttered, cleaned, and rid of all of the junk, to simply just be present in that room and to really take it all in. Take your mind away from the mental chatter and simply just be in the space that you decluttered. That helped me really notice the calm and, decluttered space around me.
Hey, Josh and Ryan. My name is Donovan from Akron, Ohio, and I've been practicing minimalism since about 5 years ago after an enlightening bout with bedbugs, perhaps a story for another time. I'm calling in with a tip for other listeners who struggle with items that they love but don't see as practical. I have a special category for these items. I refer to them as things that make my heart sing. For example, as a part of my wardrobe, I own a holiday sweater that can really only be worn during Christmas time, and a bow tie that I get to wear maybe half a dozen times a year. I could probably replace these with something more practical, or get rid of them altogether. But every time I think about or see these items, I smile, and my heart swells up with joy. It sings. So for me, these things don't necessarily bring value in their immediate practicality, but instead, they bring value in the form of joy. Because I only own a handful of these items, I'm able to get true joy out of using each and every one of these, things that make my heart sing.
Hi, this is Kristen in Asheville, and I had a comment for Sarah, who's in Salt Lake City and moving to San Francisco. There was a solution for her to store the things she loves, and there was a solution for her to get rid of them. And also at one point, you all said to maybe invest in expensive furniture that you would keep if you wanted to do that. And as a mom of twin boys who are now 10 and a daughter who's 11, I would say that if you're going to buy new furniture at this point in your life, IKEA would be the way to go. It has great aesthetics, and I know it's not the best, but your kids are going to tear up your furniture. So I wouldn't invest in anything nice at this point unless you're a way stricter parent than I am and keep your kids in line on the furniture. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because you can have a great looking house that will temporarily get you through the kid years for not a lot of money. And then you can get the expensive stuff that you love.
All right, y'all. That's it for this episode. If you have a question for the Minimalists or if you have a tip for the Minimalists, give us a call, 406-219-7839, or you can email a voice memo to podcast@theminimalists.com. And if you leave here with just one message, we hope it's this. Love people and use things, because the opposite never works. Thanks for listening, y'all.
We'll see you next time.
Sean, why don't we play him out here with Greater Charlotte by Michael Flynn. Unless you're on YouTube, then click somewhere. Right here. Right here.
That's funny.
The Minimalists.